I see your picture.
All right, much better.
Okay.
At least people know I have a face.
Yeah. So,
Now, who was it you said you had coming in, maybe?
well, I actually, um, I'm hoping that some of the guys will come in, Clark and um, Tim, and maybe some other guys. Um, and
Tim Sheldon?
yeah, Tim, the vice president,
Okay.
and I can see who's in there. I think we've got this streaming now, right? Streaming to YouTube. I finally got it streaming to YouTube on at least one of my pages. Where's this? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, I've got three people here, but they may start coming in late. I don't know how many people will show up, but what we'll do is we'll produce the content, put it on the radio show, and put it on the YouTube page and spread it around. And,
Okay.
you know,
I hate that I sound like I'm dying.
yeah, you probably are.
You might want to explain to people that I'm not myself, so they
Okay,
not disappointed in
okay,
the way I sound or not being pardon
okay,
me, live or anything on with camera.
okay. I'm all right. I think I'm going to change the image on one of my. Well, I don't think that it would be not necessary. Um, yeah.
How was
Show.
how was the NCFM meeting today?
Oh, it was good. We did have William show up. We had Harry show up, and
Is William willing to give up his hunger strike yet?
no, no, he's um, pretty committed to that. So yeah, I yeah. So I don't know what to do about that. So, but yeah, so I don't know if he'll be here either. We did have 17 signups on the Women's March page, so there may be some. Um, my mother may be here. She registered. I sent out a reminder. So
Okay.
and it usually goes about an hour and a half, but if we don't get any questions or any responses or anything, then we can cut it out early if we're not getting a lot of discussion.
How
Um,
engaged usually is your audience?
well, it depends. Um, this one, usually I have a lot of engagement if the guys come. Um, but sometimes it's just nothing, people are here to watch. So,
Okay. Well, I
let's,
hate that William's still on this hunger strike. I really wish he would consider different options.
yeah, I think, I mean, it's really a harsh decision. Um, and once he's made it, he's kind of stuck in it. Um,
What does Harry say about it? Is Harry, um, I mean, I know he's calling for NCFM to shut down and everything else.
yeah.
What does Harry say about all that?
Well, Harry was a little upset about that comment, because he feels that they are doing things. And I think, but I think William was not so much concerned about that, but he just felt people weren't being aggressive enough. And that may be true, but at the same time, you know, things don't change very easily.
Well, not just that. I mean, it's the way he's going about it. He's kind of tying people's hands. you know, I tried to explain to him, we have resources, but if we've got a waiting list for resources and we have to choose between somebody who's actively trying to kill themselves and somebody who wants to live for their children, we've got
Mhm.
to make the logical decision.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's kind of a sad situation. Um, so I may have him on next month's show if he's still alive, with Harry. Harry did put something on the website about it. I don't think he's opposed to it, but I think a lot of the members would like him to make another choice because uh, because we see death and nothing else coming from it, you
Yeah,
know.
nothing else will come from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. What's there? We've got 5 in the waiting room now. Now, to make you a co-host just in case.
Okay. If you see me go mute though, that means I gotta run for a second.
Okay. All right. So, and it's 2 o'clock. We got 6 people, so we might as well start letting them in. Meantime, I'm gonna.
Hello, Rich,
Hey, yes. Who's? Is that
and good
Clark?
afternoon, Rich's guest.
Hey, Clark. How you
Hey,
doing?
Clark.
Doing
Yeah.
very well, thank you.
Long time
How
no
about
see,
yourself?
Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. We give a few minutes for people to come in. Um, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, let's just give a few minutes for more people to come in. Let me get started pretty quickly. Hi, Anton. Hi, Denise. And hi, Amy.
Thank you for
So
having me.
you're welcome. Yeah, thank you for coming. Here's a couple more people.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Denise. How are you doing over there?
Pretty good.
Good, good. Okay. Someone's having some trouble getting in, or maybe they're away from their computer. There's my mom. Hi, Mom. Okay. So, all right. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Uh, we're just waiting a little bit, see if we can get a few more people in. I'm gonna have to be um, taking people out of the waiting room and putting them in during the program. Let's see. Okay, great. Okay, let me do this. So we are live on Facebook. It is being recorded. So just to let you know, when you come to speak, it would be great if you can turn on our camera. Our speaker is under the weather right now, but she's here. Um, but she doesn't want to use her camera because she's sick right now, but she's going to do her best. So we ask for your patience. If she disappears at any moment, we'll make up for that. So let's see. All right. So my name is Richard Proa. I'm founder of the Truth and Democracy Coalition. We work to promote democracy and try to bring America together. We're a broad-based movement. We're not a narrow-based movement. So we're trying to reach out to groups of people that to broaden the movement into groups that maybe we're not having so much success with. And one of those groups is men. And so this is part of our work in dealing with with these issues between the genders and the issues between men and women and the political situation that we're in. So, and so we decided to take a look at the family court and family court justice. And we brought in Teresa Sneed. She's the president and founder and chief executive officer of National Family Justice. And they advocate and she advocates for families using scientific data to drive or direct their reform. And she is dedicated to safeguarding children, revolutionizing family courts, and fortifying families across the United States. She's committed to justice, child welfare, and constitutional parental rights. And the mission of the National Family Justice is to create a trauma-informed systems that prioritize safe, shared parenting and enhance the well-being of children. She collaborates with other advocacy groups and organizations like ourselves to drive transformative and systemic change and reform nationwide. Let's see, where's mine? Okay. And let's see. She's I'm having problems. Here we go. Okay. So yeah. Where am I? All right. So she's also the author of Lance's Law, a landmark federal bill set to make waves when it's introduced in Congress. This legislation aims to enhance legal protection for service members and veterans who are survivors of domestic violence or other crimes. And under her guidance, National Family Justice has illuminated the path for families navigating the often turbulent waters of custody disputes and court hearings and systems. So she's going to talk about her legislative agenda and the work supporting families navigating high conflict custody and family court issues and legal system abuse. And she feels that families face rights violations, coercive control, there's domestic violence, parental alienation, and the Family Justice, National Family provides services to help people. And they also file amicus briefs in landmark cases affecting parental rights. So how are we going to remedy these problems in the family court system? But the first thing before we do that is I want to find out exactly what are the problems, what needs to be fixed in family courts. Can we start there, Teresa? What needs fixing in family court?
Oh, it would probably be easier for me to answer what doesn't need fixing in family court. It's a very adversarial process where parents are pitted against each other, and we often see that it's really not truly guided by the best interest of the children. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of judges out there, and I'm not saying it's intentional. With some it may be, but for most, I don't think it is. But they're not upholding litigants' constitutional rights. There's very little evidence when they enter into temporary orders that often become permanent by default, while people are waiting to get back into the court system so that they can have their cases heard. And families are separated by this unnecessarily for long periods of time. So that is something that we are working really hard to address. Some of you may know Robert Garza. He is our vice president, and he has written several pieces of legislation that we're working really hard to teach other parents and advocates how to introduce those pieces in their state so that they can reform the family law system. And one of those is appealable temporary orders. I know many, many parents that have had temporary orders that lasted for years, and in some cases until the children aged out, waiting to have the court have a final hearing. And that damaged relationships. It damaged attachment system networks within the children and left them at risk for lifelong problems. So that's one of the ways that we are working with families is through our legislative advocacy training. Um, and that's actually going really, really well for us. I think we've got a total of 8 of Robert's bills in at least one of his bills, a total of 8 in 23 states right now. Does anybody have any questions on
I have,
that?
I
Anything
have a
they
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, my name is Deborah Reedy, and I am just recently became a student at McShort School of Law in Sacramento, where they do have the capital lawyering program. And my purpose is to try to work with state legislators, even though I have very little faith in their desire to make changes to the system. Also in attendance today, we're both participants today. She invited me. She and I have repeatedly reached out to our state representatives with problems in the family court, and we were basically told, fill out a form for a legislative proposal. But that's not the same as really sitting down to investigate and find out what exactly is going wrong and how they could help their own constituents. I mean, this is not just a broad bill. This is people coming in with legitimate issues. And so I'm very interested in understanding how you're doing this legislative advocacy. I'd like to be involved in it. And I think that my friend Amy, who's also on here, would also like to be involved in it, because these changes have to happen now. We don't want to keep talking about them. We know the system is broken. You can turn on TV programs where they talk about how, oh, you're going through a divorce. It's, that it's a nightmare. We've known that for decades, that it's devastating to families financially. It's also devastating to children emotionally. So, the changes that we want to propose are coming straight out of our own experiences in the court system. And in my case, I'm a grandparent, so I'm a little bit more objective, but I'm still angry because I've had to spend over $50,000 on a recent trial. Actually, was a set of trials that could have been avoided had the judge been, basically had the judge not violated my son's constitutional rights as a disabled parent.
I understand that. That's one of the problems that we've had is when you go to your legislators with a problem, they really don't take any action and very seldom listen. What we have found works is if you take the solution to them, which is why we have these bills and we
have. And that's what I want to point out is that, we're not just going there saying, well, this isn't working out. It's not just a matter of, I don't like the way the court system is going. Amy and I are very, very clear on what violations are occurring. And, basically there are already constitutional protections. There's civil rights protections. My son has civil rights protections as a disabled person, but to enforce them meant that he had to go to the federal court and file another case. And so what happened to me and Amy is you have multiple cases going on. My son has a family law case and an appellate case and 2 federal cases. How much can a pro se litigant do?
It's exhausting, and I think it was, and this is just my personal opinion, not necessarily that of National Family Justice, but I think it was designed that way in many ways. It's a $60+ billion a year industry. So Robert has really, he's the one that spearheads our legislative advocacy, and he has fine-tuned this process and has had wild success with it. And he teaches other parents how to do this. So I'd be happy to connect you with Robert, and you can even do some one-on-one with him and walk you through what has worked and what hasn't worked, and how maybe you can change your approach and hopefully get some results. Is that something you and Amy would be interested in?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And believe me, Amy and I are committed, and we are intelligent, and we are science-based. We're not coming at this with, I'm unhappy, or, I don't like this. I'm telling you, we have identified very clearly what is wrong. And it's already been addressed through the Congress. Disability discrimination is not acceptable, even in the courts. That's one issue. So, what I really need is somebody to help me figure out how to make this change.
Well, we'd be happy to work with you. If you could shoot me an email at support@nationalfamilyjustice.org, I can connect you both with Robert, and we can see how we can team up on these issues. Like I said, he's the one that spearheads our legislative advocacy, and he can give you very detailed information and instructions on how he's gone about that and how he's achieved that success. So I'd be happy to do that and look forward to that.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, have you found Deborah and Amy and Teresa, if certain parties, if a legislator is of a certain party, he's less apt or she's more apt? Is there a party?
Well, I have found that in California, we have the majority Democrat. We really don't have, I don't know if Amy has a Republican senator or assembly person.
All of
Nobody.
them going on here. One party wants one thing, the other wants another.
Well, what I have found is that when I'm
None of
listening
them.
to Republicans, right, when I'm listening to Republicans on the news, they talk about family issues, and they certainly talk about some of the things that are tangential to saving money, like even in the welfare system. My son sued the welfare system in the state of California. And the reason is that there is a gender bias there, because when a woman is pregnant, she can apply for welfare. And as soon as the child is born, the child goes under her case. If you have a disabled parent, if you have an indigent parent who is a father, he has to establish paternity. And then if he has to get 50-50 custody, and then he could potentially apply for CalWorks, just like the mother has. But once the woman is on welfare, a father can't get any. And so I actually have a book. It's by Linda Nielsen. She talks about what she calls fragile families. And this really pertains to men who are underemployed, unemployed, or disabled. Because of their indigence, they lose custody at a much higher rate. And we know disabled parents lose custody at the highest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the problems that we were addressing, but we found that, in our party, in our state, all the party is primarily Democrat. We have, a super majority Democrat. They were not interested in gender bias arguments. They basically said it's not bias. We went to the federal court, and my son lost in federal court, even with a pro bono attorney. And the reason was that the state brought new information on appeal, which is not supposed to
They're
happen.
not supposed to do that, yeah.
And I don't know if that's a mandate. I don't know if that's just policy, but that's what happened. And even the attorney, he said, my son's attorney told us this is a real miscarriage of justice, because we had to support the child and my son for years while the mother was on welfare, and she obtained a master's degree. When was she eligible when was she able to provide for the child? When she had an AA, a BA? She started off with no education and she was working. She quit her job and went on welfare, got childcare for free. She got paid books, paid tuition. And basically my son owes $50,000 for the time that he was in school. The state didn't pay for him to go.
And so that's one nuance for Department of Child Services that we deal with. The other is, on the flip side, is in my particular case, my ex-husband of almost 30 years decided that he was going to once he was on unemployment for 6 months, once that ended, he ended up going on temporary disability just as we were entering a modification of custody trial. And he dragged that out and completed the full year of disability, even though he had been found during that trial to have the ability to work. He continued to collect that disability for another year. And then as disability came to an end, lo and behold, here we are before the Department of Child Services for support, and now he's unemployed. And the intent was to flip who owes whom for support. And at that point, they went ahead and in my county, they went ahead and the judge found under Family Code 4057 that it would just be unjust to make me pay support, knowing full well Mr. Adkins was capable of providing support, capable of earning, and just wasn't. And so he ended up, once it became zero, he lived in a different county. He went down to that county and he then filed for cash aid with the intent of changing jurisdiction. He continued to collect cash aid for almost 2 years. In the meantime, I'm struggling trying to feed our son. I'm a full-time working parent with 4 cases. I have I have 2 appeals joined at the 3rd District Appellate Court. I have an adversary filing against his bankruptcy to protect my interest in the estate once the appellate rules in the reverse. And now 2 family law cases, one in El Dorado County and one in Sacramento County for child support, in which they don't even have jurisdiction because it turns out that Family Code finding of 4057 here in El Dorado County made on January 22nd, 2024, and the fact that he had concealed household income to qualify for child support, he was never eligible for that child or for the cash aid. So, but they pursued me anyways. And even though they knew, so they had knowledge, but they continued to willfully pursue me for child support, even though I was on the phone with the child support attorney 7 days prior to trial, notifying her that you don't have jurisdiction to do this. Didn't matter. They pursued me anyways. And so there is currently an order for arrears. And I have requested a new hearing. And so now that is set for September 29th. But here I am. My divorce started in 2017. We're now at 2025. Our son is going to be 18 in June. This is how long I have been going through this, and I am out about $160,000.
Yeah, and I want to point out that in Amy's case, her husband was the predominant breadwinner. So, you know, that was a change.
I was a
it was
stay-at-home
big change.
mom.
Yeah, that was a big change in circumstances. Whereas with my son, he's been disabled since he was, young. I mean, he was since a child. So there's a completely different, scope on how welfare has been implicated in this. And I believe, see what the welfare rules are. It says that if a parent is absent from the home, we need to start addressing the fact that parents are sharing custody from 2 different homes. They are not absent.
That's correct.
And we have 40% of people are having babies without being married. We need to change the Welfare and Institutions Code, because that system is it's morphing what's going on in the family system, the family court system. There are ways that it's being manipulated to
So we have
disadvantage one parent over the other.
Absolutely. So we have agencies that are part of the family law system that have an impact, as you can see. But then in terms of the family law system, going back to your original question as to whether you thought there was a particular party, I would say in my particular case, what I'm dealing with is a county. I have a county that is, by and large, quite corrupt, and has a history of corruption. Well known, all one needs to do is just peruse the grand jury reports in my county, and you would see very quickly how deep that goes, and how wide that goes. And so in my particular case, it is in my county, not necessarily, I would say party-wise, just county. And so in my case, it's about protecting those who have relationships or connections, whether you're a county employee, whether you're an attorney, whether you're CCRC and you're an individual who works for the court. It is about protecting one of their own. So in my particular case, I had a CCRC who was a licensed clinical social worker who had for 5 years, I had gone before, every year for 5 years. And in the end, I was finally able to prove that she had been violating professional ethics and law, literally just violating it, just writing whatever, disregarding facts, disregarding information received from professionals, and did it in a manner that really was targeting me and not in the best interest of our son. And so while there is a 50-50 would be in the best interest of a child, it would take away that struggle or power between that dynamic of who's going to control the child. When you get into a divorce situation, there is that one dynamic where domestic violence and child abuse is involved, where it is not in the best interest of the child. How we get the courts to understand that is the challenge. It is absolutely a challenge, because it is my opinion, based on my own personal experience and the number of judges that I have been before, that they do not understand coercive control. They do not understand how it affects child development, and they do not understand how children are manipulated within the power struggle of parental alienating.
Well, one of the ways that we are working to address that and to educate judges and guardian ad litem's attorneys and all the court actors is we actually have a meeting in Toronto, Canada next week with several people that I think are going to be very, very helpful in helping us create a continuing legal education curriculum. Some of you may know Ashish Joshi. He wrote a book, Litigating Parental Alienation. He's one of the people that we're meeting with that's kind of helping us work on this. What do we need to teach these court actors? How do we do it the most effective way? And who do we bring in to help teach these courses? So that's one of the things that we're working on developing. And we will probably have some more information that we can provide people after these meetings next week, because we've all been doing it, via Zoom and emails and things like that. But we're having sit-down meetings in Toronto. So hopefully we can start to make an impact there on the education level of what is truly in a child's best interest, how to identify coercive control, how to identify parental alienation, and how it affects children when you don't immediately take action.
That's right.
Because it affects the attachment system, and it can cause, like I said earlier, lifelong problems. It increased their risks of so many different things, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, teen pregnancy,
Aggression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, PTSD.
Yep.
I mean, it
All of it.
affects
Yeah.
their mental health for the rest of their life. And not only that, but it will follow them into adulthood
And into their
and
relationship.
into another relationship. Exactly.
And so this is where when we're talking about legislation, this is where I feel that what we need to be looking at is accountability for child custody recommending counselors, because right now, the way it stands, Amy, tell me again who you're making the complaint to. CJP, tell me.
The Commission for Judicial
Thank you.
Performance.
It was in my mind. Okay, I couldn't think of the word. The Commission for Judicial Performance does not have any jurisdiction over the CCRCs. And very often they're contracted out. So they might be people who are working in the community as social workers or clinical psychologists. But once they're brought into the court system, they obtain
Absolute immunity.
judicial immunity, and there's no oversight for them. Even the State Department of the the Bureau of Licensing, they don't
The
actually,
BBS. Yeah.
you
The
cannot
Board of
make
Behavioral
complaints to
Sciences.
licensure. Yes,
Mhm.
thank you. Bureau of Behavioral Sciences. I recently had a car accident, so I'm like, but anyway, so those are some of the things that I have concerns about, is that the normal course that you would have to complain to the licensing department for them, that is no longer an option.
Yep.
For the people who are hired into the court system, they waive these requirements. The woman that was the CCRC for my son, she didn't have any licensure, had never been licensed.
That's
And she was a CPS agent prior for 30 years with just free reign to go out in the community and take children away from their parents. And it was clear that when she met my son, that was her objective. And the problem is that when he sued in federal court, the court argued, okay, or the other, the opposing party argued that she had judicial immunity and even cited case law. And my son filed a notice of appeal, and he just got a notice saying that it was too late, even though the federal judge had given him leave to file an application to proceed in form of pauperous with a deadline. That deadline exceeded the time that he had to file the notice of appeal. Well, how does a pro se litigant know that? The order said that he could file it in 28 days. And now they're saying, well, too late. Now you can't appeal this. So these are some of the problems that when we're talking about legislatively, dealing with things, I have very specific issues that I would like to raise. It has to do with accountability, not just education. Educating these people without holding them accountable isn't going to change anything.
Agreed.
I agree.
It has to be accountability.
We absolutely are making efforts to address absolute immunity. And it's not just our organization. We're partnering with other organizations to make a change there, because that absolutely needs to happen. Because
That's the
otherwise,
loophole for them.
that
That's
is the loophole. And we
Yeah.
have clients all across the United States that have stories like yours. And so that is something that we are working really hard to address too. And, we're not attorneys. I shouldn't say that. We
I
have,
will be. Give me
you
3
will be.
words.
We do have an attorney on our board, and we're getting ready to add 2 more. We have attorneys in our advisory council and those that partner with us. So I've tried to surround myself and include people in our organization that are smarter than me, so that they can help us do what we're trying to accomplish. And they recognize it too. They recognize the problems with absolute immunity. And so that's something that we're working hard to brainstorm on and figure out how we can address that and how we can make adjustments to that. I know that in some cases there's need for an immunity, but not absolute. I've
No.
never believed that
And
there's
not for people that
absolute.
are working for the court. She is not a judge. She does not
No.
exercise judicial,
Right.
discretion. She was an expert witness for the court. How can she be a judge? She's a witness.
Well, and then the other thing too is that typically if they are licensed, but now they're employed for the court and they have immunity for the court that they wouldn't have for their license through the Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Absolutely.
That's alarming. That is alarming. So then naturally the first inclination, if you're going to work in trying to determine whether there's a parental alienating case going on, or whether there's violence or abuse going on, whatever that is, you're going to want to work for the court so that you're not held accountable.
Right. Right.
And that is outrageous.
That's going to attract the worst of the worst.
It does. It absolutely does attract the worst.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I want to get back to our questions with Teresa, but I also want Clark's had his hand raised. If you want to turn on your camera, you don't have to, Clark. But you have some comment, you can unmute and give us your feedback.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Rich and fellow conferees. I had a question, but it sounds like it's been de facto answered already. So that brings up another question. The first question was, of course, Teresa, how often do you see cases of parental alienation? And apparently it's happening a lot, but could you give us a percentage of the number of cases and maybe some demographic distribution if you have that?
We have been, when we first launched in March, we were averaging about 20 requests for assistance a week. Now we're up to around 300 requests for assistance a week, and every single one of those involve parental alienation. Every single one of those. And I can't tell you off the top of my head, which states they're coming from, but they're coming from across the nation.
And
And my second question, if you didn't hear it, was how is absolute immunity negatively affecting the participants in hearings? How is it negatively affecting? I can imagine there's positive effect that the courts or the system can point to. And finally, what I was hoping to say at the beginning,
oops, did we lose Clark? Huh.
Is he out and about today? I know he often comes in
I
when
don't
he's
know
out
if
and
see if he's
about.
there, but we lost him. So we'll come back to him. So Teresa, I wanted to get back to you. I think you explained quite a bit about what National Family Justice is doing. It looks like it's doing a lot and very relevant things that it's doing. How did you get involved in this? What brought you to this?
Oh, well, National Family Justice grew out of lived experience. Mine, my husband's, my brother's, one of my really close friends that died from a stress-induced heart attack while going through this. And when my husband was going through it, I remember reaching out, trying to find resources and support, information, education, and it just really wasn't easy to access, especially not in one place. And then you'd find organizations that, we see lots and lots and lots of organizations that have the best of intentions, have huge hearts and want to help, but they don't get past that startup phase where, they've got their website with, coming soon, and it never gets past that. And so, it's easy to look back. They say we have 20/20 vision when you look back and see what we needed at the time and where the system was lacking, where the resources, where the support were lacking. And I just started, kind of collecting those resources and that information and that education and started compiling those. And Robert and I had been working together for years trying to support families that were going through this. And he said about 3 years ago, we can tackle this a couple of families at a time and we're never going to make a dent. So we need to start working on legislation, and that's where he started focusing his efforts. Now he still helps families, but that's where the majority of his focus is now. And I kept working with families trying to provide resources, and I finally just said, you know what? We can have a broader reach if I form a 501c3 and we start collaborating with others, other advocates, other nonprofits, things like that. And that's kind of how we formed. And the services we offer are services that we all felt were lacking when we were going through it. Right now, everything that we offer is 100% free. Because we've all been there. We've all paid the attorneys, we've paid the guardian ad litems, we've paid the parenting coordinators and all of that. And by the time people find us, they're broke in every sense of the word. They're broke emotionally, physically, financially, psychologically. So our goal is to provide them those resources to not only help them with their court battle, but to help them with their relationships with their children, with being a part of legislative change, with peer support. And
Teresa, that's what I'm wondering is like you said, there's lots and lots of organizations. In fact, that's how I started. I wanted to start a nonprofit and I called it IneedMyDaddy.org. And
mhm.
I have a website. And what I did was I put a lot of resources on there. And then when I started to investigate what it would take to create a nonprofit, the amount of money I would need, the support I would need, I actually went to several meetings with legislative, analysts, and they told me that it's not a popular topic in California, that people don't want to promote fatherhood here, that it isn't popular. And that's where I see a major dilemma, is that fathers are the ones that typically have to prove their worth as a parent. They come into the court as a secondary, option. It's especially for babies. We have done away with the tender years doctrine. There's no reason that fathers can't have joint equal custody as a presumption. And then I got involved with Mark Ludwig. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was involved with the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. And they brought the legislation around the country, and only 3 states adopted it. And actually, I think it was it was either in Tennessee or Kentucky. They found that there was a huge decrease in the number of domestic violence.
Kentucky, yeah.
The restraining
Great numbers
went way
coming
down
out of
because people knew they were just going to share custody, and that was it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great numbers coming out of Kentucky on the benefits of shared parenting. I mean, you do have
Absolutely.
those that say, well, that's because women are afraid to leave now. And I think there are measures in place for that. It's a presumption. If you come in with evidence of domestic violence, child abuse, things like that, then of course the court's not gonna favor an abusive parent with 50-50 custody. So there's protections in place, and that's what we're advocating for in all 50 states. There's several now. I think we've got what, 5 or 6 now. I know Florida has 50-50, and that's where I'm at.
But it's been
I'm sorry, you cut out.
years. It's been years. It's since this has been, this is how long it takes
Yeah.
to get these movements to really come to fruition.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not a popular subject. And I spent probably a good year and a half making those connections and building resources before we even applied for our status, because I wanted to make sure it was in place. I didn't want to be one of those organizations, and I'm not knocking these organizations because everybody has to have a starting point, but I wanted to make sure that as soon as we launched, we had programs and services to offer, so people didn't have to go, okay, well, you're here, how can you help me? Because I ran into those same frustrations too.
So Teresa, what changes are you suggesting for the family courts?
Well, like I said, Robert's got several bills that he has written, everything from, time taken, time back. If there is a separation, a protective separation, because the court has, made a temporary ruling because of an allegation of abuse, and then it comes back unfounded. And this is in place in Texas right now. That parent is awarded makeup time. We've also got a 3, pardon me, I'm sorry. I really am sick today, guys, so please excuse me. There's a 3-strike law. And so what that does is, if somebody is interfering with child custody, withholding custody, not showing up for exchanges, things like that, in Texas, you can go ahead and file a report. And the first time, there's a $500 fine unless the parent has a justified reason like abuse, and they have evidence, witnesses, things like that, to support that there is in fact abuse. Otherwise, there's a $500 fine. Same thing for the second time. The third time, it's a state jail felony. And what that does is, oftentimes prosecutors are hesitant to bring charges against parents. When one parent comes in and says, "Hey, my parent's obstructing my custodial time," and it's hard to get a grand jury to indict, but this helps establish a pattern for the grand jury to see this is not a one-off. This is a pattern of negative behavior, and this parent cannot provide any evidence that there is any abuse, any reason to not comply with a court order. And that gives them the power to say, okay, we feel comfortable prosecuting now. And so that's one of the bills. There's many, many bills. You can go on our website, on our resource page, and there's a link to Robert's bills on there. It's
Okay.
I think it's, oh, I'm sorry, you'd have to catch me today when I can't even remember anything. It's
Okay.
robertgarza.us or maybe robertgarza, but it's on our resource page. So look for Robert's name and you
Okay.
can get a link
Question.
to the bills on there.
Question.
Yes.
And I was going to ask Deborah, just to clarify briefly, what was the tender years doctrine that you sort of mentioned?
Oh, the tender years doctrine actually came out of the early case law that they had out of England, where children belonged to fathers. Okay, the fathers actually owned the children as kind of like property. And over time,
English law.
as women, in the English law, but as women started to rebel against that, because a lot of times they would be forced to leave the home and not have access to their children. They appealed to the courts and basically said that the children needed them because they were of tender years. They were, small children, infants, little children. So up to the age of 6, it was, they developed this idea that motherhood was more important than fatherhood, that mothers could nurture young children differently than fathers, and that those babies needed their moms. And so as a result, when in America, we had this tender years doctrine that went on for quite a while, about 80 years, where the mother always got custody and fathers couldn't get custody of their young children. And we find that the courts are still implementing this policy, even though it has been absolutely, like by mandate, it has been eradicated. But when my
Still
son
happens all over the country.
when my son didn't get custody of his daughter 50-50 right away, they gave him a step-up parenting plan that was predicated on the idea that the child was still of tender years. It actually said it right in the report. And I think that we still are carrying forward a lot of these ideas that there are gender differences, in the negative way, but not in the positive way.
But what I'd like to point out is that tender years law was the basis of what really was the start of what started out as the male having full control.
That's right. And then it went
So
and the
when
women
we look at things, it all comes back down to, well, who controlled what? And somebody had primary control rather than equal. And
Right,
trying to solve that problem in and of itself from the
that was over 100 years ago. The fact is, where we are today, women are able to manage their own, their own lives in the economy. There's actually a book, it's called Of Boys and Men, and it's written by Richard Reeves, and it is really a testimony to how women have overachieved in society at this point. They have surpassed men in the economy, the access to jobs, access to education, much higher. I'm in law school right now. 60% of the people coming out of law school, women. So, when you look at how the professions have changed, and, now we're seeing that difference, it takes years for that to happen, because when women were first given those opportunities, they hadn't really implemented them. They had to have a chance to get into the workforce. Well, now we're down 3 generations later, and we're seeing that that's happened. So we don't have to have the welfare system. The welfare system was put into place because women could not provide for their children. That actually
It was also supposed to be a means tested program as well.
right,
which is not now.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
And
No.
it's a real problem, because it actually originated in the 1930s, when if a man came back from war and he was injured, he couldn't provide for his family enough, or if he had died, that was what it was for. Women who were married to men who could no longer provide. And so we've completely taken that and turned it into a vehicle for women to basically get a free education and have free childcare, where the father is completely alienated from the family. He's not even considered part of the family. The family is the mother and the children. That's the definition. And anybody living with her, if she's married to somebody new, he could be part of the assistance unit. The father who is not the biological father, right, or the husband who's not the biological father can receive benefits for that child if he's
And
the
there's
mother.
and they're failing to actually go back and validate whether now they still qualify.
Exactly. The whole thing is just, we need
It's
a
a
complete
cluster.
revamp of the welfare system, total.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have 50-50 custody, nobody should be getting it unless they can prove that they need it because of a disability or some medical, like in other words, some demonstrable, provable cause.
Right, right. Because sometimes they're on it and it's not. Maybe they're on drugs, you know?
Or they
Oh.
can work. If somebody has the child 50% of the time, you can work 50% of the
I'm
time.
just getting
Actually,
started.
there are
Is
statistics.
that one in there being,
What is it? Clark's back, so I'm
Okay,
going to bring him in here with his question.
thank you. I'm encouraged by the discussion about one parent interfering with custody, the other parent getting makeup time. But I'm wondering uh, if there's any legal sanction that is imposed or is able to be imposed when one parent interferes with custody.
Well, Clark, with that three-strike law that Robert has written and it's implemented in Texas and a couple other states now, the first offense is a $500 fine. The second is a $500 fine. And then the third is a state jail felony.
Now, I thought that was pertaining only to um, false allegations of abuse.
It's
Am I
been
wrong about that?
in Texas right now, that's how it's written, but he's modified that bill for other states so that now it is for custodial interference as well. So if you don't have it in your state, you can go on his website. He's modified those for all 50 states, and that's just a starting point. It doesn't mean that you have to take it verbatim. Some of the legislators that, pardon me, look at these we'll want to make some modifications, and that's where testimony is important. We encourage everyone, when these bills are up, to go in and testify so that these legislators can see and hear your personal stories and why this is needed. Here in Florida, we've taken some of Robert's bills and modified them because here in Florida, we can't just introduce those pieces of legislation without correcting some existing pieces of legislation. So when you take a look at Robert's bills, you've got to do that with your state. You've got to go and you got to check out your laws and say, okay, if this is implemented, is there another law that's going to contradict it? You got to do a little bit of research, and that's where, modifying that to your state's needs comes in, because Chris Felder spearheaded our group in Florida where he took Robert's bills and then we went back and looked at all the other bills to say, okay, if we implement this without correcting this, that's going to contradict, this is going to leave loopholes. And so we modified them to fit our state. And so that's what we're encouraging parents to do, and we're teaching them how to do that. Did that answer?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And what I was going to say earlier before you came on board is that, there's been studies that show that women who have shared parenting, 50-50 shared parenting with their partner, have higher earning potentials. They have less stress, less anxiety, less depression. Children have better relationships with both parents. There's so many positives to this. And shared parenting, it can be achieved no matter the age. On our resource page under tools, we have some case studies on the benefits of shared parenting for all the different age groups. And a lot of parents will take those and use those with their arguments when they are petitioning the court for shared parenting. Some of those are in a standalone document, and some of those are in our 50-50 shared parenting plan. That's just gives you some resources and you know, the benefits to it and how you can kind of approach your partner with how to implement these things and create a shared parenting plan. So we do have resources like that, and we're adding resources on a fairly regular basis. So check out our website. It's nationalfamilyjustice.org, and you know, check in periodically because we do add resources as we either create them or find them.
Well, what I'd like to really focus on are the structural barriers to success. I think that there are too few resources for pro se litigants. Even the family law facilitator's office, which often gives wrong information, is not enough help. We need to have accountability for CCRCs. We need to look at the structural problems when you have a judge that you can't get rid of. I mean, if once you have a negative relationship with a judge, you should be able to find some way to pivot and get another opinion. I've seen people in this particular county where Amy is, that's where my son was. We're not there anymore. But when I say we, it's you know, the royal we, the family. It's all of us, because my son's not battling this alone. My husband and I have had to foot the bill for all of the litigation. So we are completely invested. And the thing is that, you know, one of the barriers I've seen for another parent who's there has been his relationship with the minors counsel. She has made statements that are so abusive, discriminatory, and clearly display an animosity toward him and an absolute reluctance for him to have any custody rights. How can he possibly break that barrier to see his children? She is a barrier to his successful reunification with his children. She personally is.
It goes back to that corruption that I was referring to, is that if they're associated with the county, if they're connected to the county, if they're connected to the judge, and there's a personal relationship, if you happen to be a litigant who's on that wrong side, you are in a lot of trouble.
Yes, you are definitely, you are up against, you're not fighting the other parent.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're fighting a whole
Not
team of
fighting the
people.
other parent.
Yes.
One of the things that we try to avoid is the use of the word corruption. Think of it as like a computer file. One day it's working, the next day it's not. It's because it's been corrupted. It's never really worked. So we try to avoid using that because it's never worked. Number one.
Okay.
Number two, if you're trying to approach people and change legislation, they really don't like to hear that word, and it kind of puts them off. And so we try to use the words like dysfunctional, flawed, broken, things like that. And that has really helped in kind of reframing, has really helped kind of open some doors for us.
Okay.
Now we have applied. What we've been doing is we've been working with clients one-on-one with their cases, and with approximately 300 requests a week, we're having trouble keeping up with those. We need more volunteers, and we do provide training for our volunteers. But in the interim, we're scrambling to try to figure out how we can help parents without keeping them on waiting lists. So we have applied for a grant to produce a program that parents can get the help that they need and all the information, you know, how to draft a document, how to address this situation, that kind of thing. And it takes a lot of money. It takes some time to get those grants through, and then it takes a while to produce it. I recently made a connection with a wonderful man who's already done what we wanted to do. And he's put a lot of money into it, and it took him about a year, a little over a year, to develop this program. And I took it a week and a half ago, and it was phenomenal. I would have been so grateful to have had this years ago when my husband and I were going through it, and even before I met my husband, when I was going through it. So we actually have been meeting with him, and we're going to become an affiliate partner with him. And we are working on a deeply discounted rate because I've explained to him in no uncertain terms that when people come to us, they're broke. And so he's working with us to find a good price. And that parents can afford. And also what he's incorporating into this program at our request is, for example, we've said, okay, you know, I've got parents that deal with jurisdictional issues, kind of like you are, Amy.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be adding a mod. He's an attorney that developed this.
Okay.
He's going to be adding a module for that. He goes through the Baker model for parental alienation.
Picture.
Okay.
And I think, I hope many of you are familiar with the Baker model. It's a really good model, but there are some cases where that doesn't move the needle at all. And so I personally like the attachment-based parental alienation model. I don't know how many people are familiar with that. Dr. Craig Childress developed that.
Mhm.
And
Didn't he get
so,
a lot of, wasn't he the one that there was some criticism of him?
oh, there's lots and lots of criticism of
Yeah,
him.
because
Lots of
they call him a pedophile, and I don't know.
No, you're thinking of Richard Gardner.
Oh,
No,
Gardner,
no,
okay.
Dr. Childress,
Oh,
he's
Childress, he's on my website. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Childress. And so we are getting him to do another module where he incorporates the attachment-based parental alienation model, because, you know, judges are as human as everybody else. And something that may resonate with one judge may not with the other one. I know in my husband's case, you know, we tried the Baker model, and it didn't move the needle at all. But then we went and got an assessment with Dr. Childress, and everybody who read it and looked at it was just like, wow, oh, the court should know this stuff. And I can only
Yeah.
imagine how much damage has happened to the children in the years that we've been trying to get this. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. We just want to see the cat skinned. So
And the
Exactly.
thing is, Teresa, you have to ask yourself, how can the court not know this? I mean, you know, we know it, right? I'm a grandparent and I know it, but
and
it's
like
this
in
is
my
their
case-
job.
I can answer that one. I can answer that one. There's continuing medical education for physicians, but there's no continuing legal education that demands that a judge expose themselves to this, let alone be willing to engage it
Yep.
in their
Yep.
working with clients, with parties, because they think that they don't need to know anymore.
So
That's absolutely right. And when we get this CLE course developed, and that's why we've pulled in some really amazing attorneys that, like Ajish teaches continuing legal education classes on a regular basis. We're talking with another attorney in California who has gone through this as well, and he also has his PhD in, oh, please don't quote me, but I think it's neurobiology. I'd have to go back and look. But how we can present this to the American Bar Association so that we can make sure that family court judges are required to have hours with these types of training, so they know this information.
well,
we're
I
kind
can
of-
tell you there's a lot of pushback on the particular training, especially.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of pushback. As a matter of fact, I believe that it was just signed into state law just last year that judges would need to have some form of training as it relates to domestic violence and understanding coercive control.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
great.
just took, last year I took a 56-hour course at the Family Justice Center. And I have to tell you that almost the entire course, I was definitely on the blacklist there, because the entire course was about women.
Women, yeah.
All of the
women.
victims were women. They never talk about men being victims of anything.
And
And-
coercive control is not gender specific.
No, and my
And you know, the statistics show that women and men abuse at almost equal rates,
That's correct.
That's right.
but the difference is in how they abuse.
That's correct.
Women are more
Absolutely
covert.
correct.
Men tend to be more overt. And so these are the things that we really want to make sure that when we're educating stakeholders, that they understand this information and learn how to apply it in a gender neutral way.
But then we need to have people who are teaching it in a gender neutral way. And I can,
And that's what
program-
we're working on. And we're collaborating with many other organizations. We're doing MOUs. We've got 2 MOUs in place right now, and we're working on another one with another prominent organization. I don't want to say until we have all of our documents signed, but I'm sure people in this space will probably recognize it.
Last one.
Yes, Clark.
No. I was talking to somebody else here in the gym.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then I just want to introduce my husband. This is Rick Tyler. He's my husband. And he has been retired from the state. He worked for the state for 37 years. He did not want to spend his retirement working on legal issues for the family court. But basically what happened was, and he goes to all of the exchanges to make sure that there are no false allegations. The woman accused my son of rape. She accused him of all kinds of everything. She's accused him of everything. But basically, he goes to every exchange. So for the past 7 years, this has been a big part of both of our lives. And that's the only way that we would get to see our granddaughter. So, but he has been hugely outspoken with the attorneys on what he expects them to do. And that's another part of it. And if
They don't want to do, I mean,
They don't, yeah.
one of the biggest issues that I see are these recommending counselors. Basically, everyone needs to understand that a recommending counselor is no different than any other expert witness. And there are requirements about what you can testify to as an expert witness, but no one ever calls it. I prepared a document challenging one of the reports almost in its entirety based on hearsay. It was complete hearsay, the whole thing, clearly inadmissible.
Right, and we prepared it for the attorney. The attorney didn't want to submit it. He said, go ahead, and he said, if you want to submit, what did he say? He said, go ahead and submit it if you want to, but they're not going to pay attention to it.
And they did. They basically, she lost completely. And it's, it's based on Sanchez. When you hear attorneys go in and say, oh, Sanchez,
It was a criminal
you
case,
can't,
but it's applied to the
but you
civil
can't.
to civil litigation as well.
Whenever you invoke Sanchez, the very next thing everyone should expect is a motion to suppress some evidence. That's what it's all about.
Because they can talk to people and then they can come to court and they can testify about those contacts that they made, collateral contacts.
But they can't.
The problem is they can't talk about something somebody told them outside of court.
They can't do anything that's case specific. In other words, anything that relates to one of the parties, you can't testify to that as an expert witness.
Right.
You have to testify to general
on the
knowledge.
fact of the matter. Otherwise, you have a right to, what is it? The Sixth Amendment. It was Sixth Amendment, but it's also you have a right to basically face your accuser.
Oh, yeah,
Sixth Amendment in criminal confrontation clause.
That's another.
But basically,
Cross-examination.
it's the same with civil litigation. If, let's say, in a case, this is what happened. Somebody from the school said something, whatever, and then the CCRC comes to court and says, well, Miss So-and-so said this. That's hearsay. But the court allowed her to make recommendations based on what that person said. And that's the same as introducing it as a matter of fact in her recommendation. And that was one of the things that basically Rick said, no, she can't. And he said it to the attorney. She can't do either. She can't introduce it herself, and she can't introduce it in a backdoor way either. And he did go in and he objected, but it really wasn't until Rick kind of demanded that, because a lot of times the family law attorneys aren't using every
because that just
device that they can.
The rest of the litigation. I mean, when you throw
They should
out
be eliminating litigation.
when you throw out a CCRC, what's there left to litigate?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
You definitely have to educate yourself on the system, how it
I was
works,
just gonna
what
say,
options
that's
are
it.
available to you, because there's been times, like with my husband's attorney, I had to be the one to say, why aren't you filing this? Why haven't you filed this? Why haven't
There
you
you
filed
go.
that?
Yeah.
Here's the bullet point information for you to include in this filing, and ride that man. It was funny when we have conversations, my husband would just laugh because he'd start to interrupt me and or vice versa. And we've kind of got this joke. I've known this attorney longer than I've known my husband, but we've kind of got this joke going, well, we're not married. You don't get to interrupt me. You have to let me finish. So my husband laughs at us when he's listening to it, when he used to listen to us go back and forth on these things. But it was me that would come in with the outline, with the information, with the case law, with, different things. And how do you find this? I do my research. How are you
Right.
not
Well,
using,
My son's attorney knew about these things, but here's the other problem. And here again, this goes right back to the thing with Amy. It wouldn't matter in front of this judge. You really, it almost didn't matter what you did. This judge was going to make sure if you were the person that she really had identified as the person she did not want to win. We have seen her recount the evidence and go, this is what the court has found, A, B, C. And then she would come up with some order that had nothing to do with that. Like all of it, she's just out of the blue sky.
Disregard evidence that she had just said.
She just didn't want it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
it happens more often than not.
I'm sure.
I
And then
knew
going
that.
back to your point about the attorneys as well, is that they have an ethical duty. They're required. Their license requires them through professional ethics.
But we were told point blank that they are not going to do things. They're not. I said, the only way you win this is you go for the jugular vein on
Yep.
the CCRC. If it's damaging to you, you go for the jugular vein. And I'm telling you, I was an expert witness for the state, and I sat on those stands myself as an expert witness. I would have got completely reamed if I tried to do the things they get away with.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
one of the problems, and we encountered this with my husband's attorney, was, I'm saying you've got opposing counsel violating Rule 11, and you've got opposing counsel violating this. Why aren't you filing for sanctions? Why aren't you doing this? And the thing was, I've got to live and work in this community.
That's
it
exactly.
That's exactly.
it.
That was it. That was the next
That's
word
it.
out of his mouth.
That was.
Yep. They
that's
don't
what
care
that
whether
was.
they actually violate their professional
I'm
ethics
not
because they
gonna-
have to work with that judge.
They have
I'm
to
not
work
gonna
with that
challenge-
judge.
I'm not going to go challenge
Mhm.
the CCRC and Ray
Because
Pearl
his
because
other clients would
his other
suffer.
clients will pay the price for him doing it.
And what this is
Right.
coercion.
And
Yeah,
there lies the
absolutely
dilemma.
coercion.
There
Yeah.
lies the dilemma. Even if you're hiring an attorney and he's sucking your life savings away from you to fight for you, and you're still in the same position that you are 8-10 years later, where you've now handed over 160 grand to this attorney, you still have the same coercive control dynamic 10 years later,
Yeah.
and you're now drained of every penny.
And studies show, I think it was National Parents Organization that posted a study that where they had polled, please don't quote me on this because I'm not looking at it, but and I'm trying to pull from memory, but I believe they had polled judges, and judges are less likely to take litigants seriously and look at
Correct.
their evidence if they're pro se.
That's correct.
But we're trying to empower pro se litigants and
Because
teach
80% of the people in family court are pro se.
Right. And we're trying to, we have attorneys that teach on how to present evidence, how to get it entered, how to do this, how to do that, so that they can increase their chances of being taken serious by the judge. And then you can do those things. You can file for Rule 11 sanctions if you were previously represented by an attorney that wouldn't do it because they were scared of being blackballed or whatever the excuse is.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. That's why I'm really excited about this program. We actually have another meeting on Monday with the founder and the creator of the program to discuss a few more things that we want to add to it. And what he has offered to do for us is create a question and answer session once a week for everybody that's taken this program. So you can get in, you can submit your questions ahead of time so you can be anonymous, because we all know there's trolls in some of these groups, and maybe your ex is in there or your son's ex or whatever it may be trying to get information. So you can post questions anonymously to him and they will be answered in a weekly question and answer session. You'll
Excellent.
have lifetime access to the program, so you can go back and rewatch. If there's a particular module that, maybe it wasn't an issue when you went through it, but now it is, and you need to figure out how to do something, you can go back and rewatch it. He's got Google Docs with example motions and other resources and things in that. I'm so excited about it because this was going to take us tens of thousands of dollars to do on our own and probably maybe a year to produce it, and he's already got it. The disadvantage is that we don't own it, we can't offer it for free, but we are negotiating a good price that I think will be fair, because I've told him, sometimes when people come to us, they've got to choose between, spending money to get a consultation with an attorney or buying groceries that week.
Amen.
And so we're working with him to get it at a price point where it can still cover his costs. He's got just like us, he's got operating costs, he's got, websites to maintain and things like that. But to get it at a price point where people can afford it and have that lifetime access, those question and answers, they'll be involved in a Facebook community where with other parents who have gone through the program, and then they can share, tips and tricks that worked for them, how they drafted motions, whatever. So this is going to be an additional support program that we should be launching here very soon with him, because we do have a backlog. We do have people on our waiting lists. And that's something that we need. We need more volunteers, intake specialists, case managers, things like that. So if you know anybody who wants to volunteer, please send them to our website. And we do provide training. We've teamed up with the Polyvagal Institute to make sure that all of our volunteers are trauma informed.
Yeah.
And then we do have legal compliance training, things like that, because we are not attorneys, and our volunteers cannot, unless they actually are in that state, they can't represent themselves as such. So we're working really hard to be able to meet the demands that we're finding now. That I was just shocked. It was my first interview, is when we started spiking from that, approximately 20 a week to now, like I said, we average about 300 a week. And we've only got 3 of us that do this full time, and the rest are volunteers that give us, a couple hours a week. And so we really need help.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end. I wanted to get a real quick definition on the CCRC or whatever it is that you guys rattled off. What does that
It's a-
stand for?
Child custody recommending
Recommendation
counselor.
counsel.
Okay.
They do a report for the judge.
Mhm.
Okay.
And one thing you have to, you can't, you're going to lose anytime you allow someone to just put in any kind of hearsay or supposition. Real evidence is hard to come by, and it's very difficult to present correctly and have it accepted. But
And it's difficult to, if you don't know the right way to object,
that's right.
to
And
get, yeah.
that's what sandwich has. And to 2 things you can't have is you have to have confrontation of anybody they want to have as a witness, and you have to have real information. You can't have hearsay. So if they want to present that, they need to bring the person to court to
Mhm.
testify,
Cross-examination.
so you can
Exactly.
confront them.
Right.
And it may be criminal cases, but confrontation and hearsay are still legitimate issues in civil law as well as criminal law. That's why they accept, the courts generally have accepted Sanchez.
Right. But
As
I
an
just want
objection.
to point out, I'm only in my 3rd week of law school. I just started, and I was prompted to do this because of all the litigation my son has been through, and the fact that I don't expect it to end. The mother is clearly the impetus, but the court system has been equally, troublesome for us, because we didn't get really fair adjudication. And then on top of that, my son has a history of disabilities. When he first started his case, the very first thing he did was to file a request for accommodations that was denied. And then he went to a 3-day trial where they denied his accommodations in whole.
Mm.
So, he never really had a fair hearing.
Yeah, my brother
Yeah.
went through that too. And the gentleman that wrote this program that I've been talking about, like I said, he's an attorney, and we've had several conversations about it. And he says this program will teach you what we didn't learn in law school,
Right.
which I found was interesting because he says there's really not a lot as far as the curriculum in law school on family law.
There isn't. And so one of the things I'd love to be able to do is, there's a lot of young people there, and I'd like to influence them mildly by offering opportunities for them, for students, that where they can participate and start to understand some of these complexities and where we're having problems. And because many of them are not aware. But I've also found that because of some of them are young students, when I've briefly discussed it, and I don't bring this up in classes, but when I'm talking face to face with individuals and they ask, why did you come to law school? That's my opening. And so what's interesting is that I have talked to several people who were children of divorce and know about this. So it's of interest to them. But I want to be able to advance what we're doing in my group of people as I get to know people. I can't broadcast it at McGeorge, but I can tell individuals about this program and see if they're interested.
That would be great.
It would be to not have to go to an appellate level. There is that family law facilitator at the trial courts, but once you get to an appellate level, you don't have that same equivalent.
Yeah.
So as much as we'd love for families to not have to get to that appellate level, we still need those resources at those levels as well. And those are some of the other challenges, at least for me, and I know Debbie, that we're experiencing. And it's not just at the appellate level, it's also in your state, it's in the district, it's within the federal, any of those higher courts. It's just impossible to find any type of facilitator that is offered in the trial courts.
Right. But then my son also had a problem with the federal court when he filed his complaint, because he actually filed a complaint when he had another trial coming up. And what they did was they let it sit on the desk of the judge. They didn't make he had filed a motion to proceed in form of pauperous. Well, it was getting close to the time that he was going to have a hearing. And I called the court and I said, look, my son filed this months ago. What's happening with it? And he said, it'll be 8 months or more before the judge can hear the motion on his fee waiver, which his trial would have been over. That to me is another structural barrier. They said, you can come down and you can pay the fee. You can pay the filing fee and we can hear, and we can, send, and we can give you the summons today. Well, to me, that's like saying, well, if you're poor and you're pro se, well, you can wait. We don't have to give you any justice right now. That is something that I want.
Justice delayed is justice denied.
That's right.
Correct.
So we actually were forced to pay the filing fee. That my husband's retired. This is where all his retirement's going. Family court. And then the other argument I made was there's a program at UC Davis where I graduated from, and it's supposed to be, they're supposed to be studying the effects of poverty and causes of poverty. And so I wrote them a long email and I said, I'd like to know if any of you are looking at the family court system as a source of poverty amongst children, because when parents have to spend everything they have, sell their homes, sell everything they've got in order just to have contact with their children, this is destroying any wealth that child might inherit. And
the problem is that the wealth transfer is perceived to be from men to women and not the children. So
that's correct.
Yeah.
So it's nothing's going to be done about it,
Right.
until the perception is corrected.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. And that's why I started the website, ineedmydaddy.org. If you want to take a look at that, I really want to continue to build the website, but I realized that I couldn't do anything with it unless I had a law degree, because to give people real help means I have to be able to give them legal help.
Yeah. So one more, well, we're coming to the end here. I've been sitting here like a potted plant because I've never been married, no children that I'm aware of. And I am a lawyer, but I do disability law. So I don't have any experience with this.
It's the best choice I've ever made. I carefully and meticulously planned my parenthood. I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
So that's my 2 cents.
No, I did not necessarily plan my non-parenthood, but in any case, I avoided, well, which in hindsight probably was the best thing for me. So, but I wanted to give Teresa one opportunity to say anything that we missed, either about military or to speak to some of the liberal women in that may be listening to this, or maybe here, but or about the whatever you want to say. Do you have anything you want to say in closing?
Hmm. Well, we do provide services for military families. I think you had mentioned Lance's Law. I've been working with our legislator here in Florida, and we've actually separated that into two bills now. We've got the Colonel Lance Sneed Military Justice Protection Act, which is to protect service members' retirement from spouses that have committed domestic violence and other crimes against them. And then we have the Survivor Benefit Integrity Act, which also protects their survivor benefits. We do provide educational resources for service members on their rights as far as the Service Member Civil Relief Act right. And there's another one for deployed service members to protect their child-parent relationship, which unfortunately a lot of them are not made aware of before they deploy. So we work with military families a lot. Actually, we're finding the last time we ran the numbers, almost 60% of the parents that are reaching out to us for help are veterans.
Cool.
And so there is a need for that. I'm trying to think. We've got a lot of different programs that we have in place and a lot that we're working on. We have a peer-to-peer support program, and that's led by our director, Josh Tynes. We have different groups, different times, different meetings. You can join a faith-based group or a more of a secular group. And what we're trying to do, Dr. Stephen Miller was a mentor of mine, a wonderful, wonderful man who passed away a few years ago unexpectedly. And a lot of parents, when they go to court and they're victims of legal abuse, parental alienation, things like that, they present as anxious, agitated, afraid, or angry. And judges just presume that that's who they are at all times. They don't understand it's situational and that they're trauma victims.
Exactly.
Whereas on the opposite side of that, the abusive parent or the alienated parent presents as cool, calm, collected, and confident. So one of the things that we work with in our peer-to-peer support programs is making sure that parents learn, how grounding techniques, self-regulation, things like that. We'll teach them exercises that they can do, if they're in court and they're testifying, how to calm themselves, engage both sides of the brain, so they can learn to present better. We also teach them communication skills with their co-parent, because as I'm sure many of you know, communicating with a parent that's just hell-bent on destroying you and your relationship with your child can be exhausting at best. And so we teach them different skills to do that. We also go over our programs and walk them through how to use the self-help resources, organize documents, things like that. I know Richard had mentioned our amicus briefs. We do those in precedent-setting cases. We've got one right now in Nebraska that we're working on. And those take a lot of time and a lot of resources, and most of the judges in lower courts don't accept those, so we don't do that for the lower courts. But we've got a lot of resources, and we definitely, because we are growing faster than I ever imagined when we launched in March. We need more volunteers, and my belief is that, and I'm a believer, so God doesn't call the qualified, he'll qualify the called. And so whether you think you have skills or not, don't worry about it. We'll teach you, we'll train you. Let's see, we always invite anybody who's interested in legislative advocacy to join with us. especially if you already have experience in it. I mean, we know that we didn't write the book on it, and we have things that we can learn, and we're always open to anything that someone can teach us, but we know what's worked for us, and we're happy to teach that to other parents, other advocates. So, and then last, financial support. We have spent so much time working with clients since we just exploded. We have not had any time to do fundraising at all.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you, is that one of the things I see as being like, there's so much to do, is that there has to be outreach. People have to know about you. They have to be able to know that you need donations. They have to be able to know that you need volunteers. And so one of the things that if you could help me do is, I would like to, because I feel like getting on top of a building and screaming, I feel like at least I could use my voice to say the things that need to be said, and maybe try to find some public speaking opportunity to get this word out. That's what I feel most. I feel compelled to make people realize that this is a community problem. It's not each individual parent's problem.
No, it's a nationwide problem.
It is.
And family court, whether it
affects your local community
directly, you're going to know somebody that's embroiled in it, and somebody, whether it's your brother or your cousin or your friend down the street,
or the kids in your neighborhood that are getting into trouble because they have no dad.
Right. Yeah. It affects
fact that
everyone.
I said about COVID, it's just as pervasive as that.
Yes.
And just damn near as damaging. I mean, it's just unbelievable what kind of hell you can be put through.
Mm-hmm. There's another advocate that I know, and we have so much in common. She's a nurse, she's a cancer survivor, she's an advocate, so I identify with her on every level. And she created a t-shirt a number of years ago, and I said, I've got to get one of these. And it talks about how cancer is tough, but parental alienation is harder.
Oh, it
this
affects
is
even the parent for the rest of their life.
Yes, it does.
And they're at a higher risk of suicide.
Yes, absolutely. And we actually have those crisis intervention moments too. We had the weekend before last where we had to work with, this was a mother that was ready to unalive herself because of what she was enduring in the family court system. And she felt like there was no hope, and she'd never see her children again, things like that. So fortunately, we had advocates in her state that were close to her that could get to her to help her get through that difficult time. So we do as much as we can, as often as we can. We do, we have social media and things like that. I'm not a huge fan of social media. But I know that that's one way that we can get the word out. I'll be speaking at a domestic violence rally next month. I'm speaking, let's see, what have I got? I think it's in November. We'll be in DC. Let's see, let me find my notes here. November 5th and 6th. We've got a meeting with legislators, and then we're doing some public affairs stuff. And that's a number of groups that are doing that. It's not just National Family Justice, but we're trying to get the word out. But at the same time, I'm also scared of growing any faster than we already are, because we can't keep up with our current demand. So that's where we need, if you or anybody is interested in volunteering, we would love the help, because parents and grandparents are reaching out to us at an alarming rate, needing support, and we have it and we want to give it. We just don't have enough people to help facilitate all those requests right now. So that's really our two biggest needs right now, is volunteers, and then maybe we've got somebody that's coming on board. She's actually in the process of doing her training, to help develop donor relations. And we do have fundraising ideas that we will be implementing. But in the interim, we still have our daily operating costs, and like 4 of us are going to Canada next week. And so
what about law schools? I mean, I'm thinking about McGeorge, they have capital lawyering there.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a place where these, people get to work with their state legislators and work on a lot of this type of stuff. I mean, like I said, I've been there 3 weeks. I'm already, feeling like I'm not really sure. I don't see anything really much in family law, but what I'm wondering is there any outreach you can do at law schools?
So
that
it's almost
would
like
help
you're
students to get some legislative
coordinating.
experience? Can you
Yeah.
frame it that way?
I mean, that's definitely something we can look into. Yeah.
Good.
I
And
know
Lincoln
that
Law
some,
School is another one. Lincoln Law School here in Sacramento is another one. I
Mhm.
think you would get a lot of a lot of tread there. When I was accepted there, but I chose not to go because I could only be licensed to practice in California, and I wanted to go to an ABA approved school. But I will tell you, I found it very appealing, and I found their teachers to be very appealing. And I think that you would be able to have a good outreach there.
okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
So I wanted to make a couple announcements here before we close. One is next month on October 5th, we're going to be having a discussion about bringing men back into the Democratic Party, back into the left. We're having the president of the National Coalition for Men come, and he's written a letter, and both the Democratic Party and Governor Newsom are taking initiatives on trying to reach men. And so we're going to be talking about that. You can register for that at tinyurl.com/bringmenback. And then,
And I'm here
And
for it.
They have absolute poisoned that one. I mean, in my opinion.
They have.
I mean, it started clear back when they went after affirmative action. And that's when they lost the trade unions, because people working in trade unions weren't going to go for, oh, a person's been here 2 months and we're going to promote them to this. Because
And most of them used to be members of the Ku Klux Klan, but that was back in 1947.
yeah, I mean,
I think that Newsom is reaching out to men now. Let's see what happens.
He's reaching out now after he just told my son that he wasn't eligible to have any kind of services.
well, we're going to,
Rhetoric is I'm masculine toxic.
Toxic
Yeah, I'm a toxic
masculinity.
person because I'm masculine.
Yeah,
I mean, I am telling you, they've got to walk a long way backwards. And I was a Democrat my whole life. First time I voted for someone was Reagan. The second time was Trump. Okay, and right now I cannot see myself ever being part of the Democratic Party ever again.
well, we're going to talk about that next month.
okay.
And
Come back,
And-
Rick.
yes,
It's going to happen.
yeah,
I mean,
and
they just,
I meant to the conversation.
yeah.
yeah, we're going to have the conversation next month. I'd rather not go into it here, but also,
Can I jump in real quick?
yeah, sure. Who's this?
I see a comment in here from Robin. Children are she said, I'll make a donation. For anybody interested in making a donation, you can go, pardon me, you can go to our website at nationalfamilyjustice.org, and there is a donation button at the top.
Okay, great.
And I got
Thank
two.
you, Robin.
Right.
I mean, that's nice.
It defies America. It defies the Declaration of Independence. It defies everything. It's a human being. So it just breaks my heart. I mean, I'm watching my own self just go down. And I know the Lord has this, but it's not good. And
It's still hard. Well, and if anybody needs that peer support, you can sign up through our website too. You can hit the request assistance form, and we can get anybody who needs that peer support into a program.
and just, you think of, like I said, if I'm invisible and I don't see color, I see people and the children, no, it's not our fault that they're broke. We pay their paychecks,
Yeah.
and these are children. I'm sorry, everything stops with children.
Yeah.
Okay, two more events. One, I've got this Whittier No Kings group that I'm doing, and they're meeting at 4 today. So I got another meeting coming up. But we have that every month, and that's at tinyurl.com/Whittier No Kings. And then on the 5th, also at 6 o'clock in Bellflower at the Stand Up Comedy Club. You're all invited to my birthday party, which is also the graduating class for the comedy class I'm taking, which I'm trying to address some of these issues in a way in which people can swallow. So,
Enough.
and to also find some way to deal with these issues in a way that's healthy and not psychologically distressing.
Common
So,
ground.
yeah. So,
Humor is a mature defense.
yes, yes, thank you. So I want to thank everybody for coming. You're going to be all on my mailing list. So I want to invite you to come to next month's program and also in the future. And you're welcome to come if you're near Bellflower. Thank you, Teresa, for coming.
Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, Richard, for having this.
Yes, thank you, Richard. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, Debbie and Amy and Robin and Clark and everyone for participating. And so we're going to put this show out, put it on the radio, and put it on YouTube soon, so you can check it out there. So stay in touch, everybody. Everybody keep up the good work. You're all doing good work. You're all trying to make a difference. And I'm happy about that.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
You're
Guys.
welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone.